welcome. This is one of a series that is based on, I wrote this book, it was released last September, Powering Inclusive Cultures, Why Measurement Matters. You can order it on Amazon or from our website. And it is, so that's, each one is a chapter. So this is the chapter on race and ethnicity. And my guest today, my guest presenter is LaJuana Warren. Hello, LaJuana. And her company, LaJuana and I have been, she's been a member of Spectra as a change partner, which is how Spectra works. We have an assessment, but we don't do the strategies and all the workshops and everything for the people that take the assessment. That is the job of what we call our change partners. And LaJuana was, I believe, the first, maybe the second change partner. So we've worked together for several years. And this is what we're going to be covering today. So a little education on the many ways that racist or non-inclusive behaviors show up at work and in life. We're going to dispel a few myths about recruiting and retaining people of color. And hopefully we're going to motivate you to take some steps to mitigate racist and or non-inclusive behavior at work. I've got a couple of books that if you haven't read any of these, I actually recommend all of them. I think the first one I read was Caste, and then I read How to Be an Anti-Racist, and then DEI Deconstructed. They're all just excellent, excellent books. So I would recommend those in addition to, of course, the book that this webinar is based on. So I want to start with a poll so that we can see where you are. So I'm going to launch this poll, and hopefully this will give, let me know if you can see the poll. Can you? Oh, people are answering it. So I guess you can see the poll. Okay. And you can pick more than one answer. And when these are the categories that we use in our Spectra poll, our Spectra assessment. And when people pick more than one, say you're, part Asian and part white, then on our report, you show up as the Asian, as the white, and also as multicultural, multi-ethnic. So that's kind of how that works. So not quite everybody has taken the poll. It is anonymous, so. Oh, apparently that's what I needed to say. It's anonymous because a few more came in. Okay, so right now we have, of our audience, we have 6% American Indian or Alaska Native, 12% Asian, 16% Asian American, 47% Black African American, 5% Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, and 47% white or Caucasian. So thank you. Well, we have a diverse group here, and that is what I like to see. I think you can see the results. I'm not sure. I've never quite gotten that part of the, yep, I got a thumbs up from LaJuana. So thank you very much. And I'm so glad to see that we've got a mixed group here. So the United States, as you know, has kind of a history of racist behavior. So 1500s was the arrival of Europeans to the Americas. At that time, the indigenous people were the out group or the other, and genocide began, and it continued, and it's still definitely an issue today. Not genocide, but Native Americans being, othering. 1619, slaves were brought by the Europeans to the Americas. 1790, Benjamin Franklin, he petitioned Congress to abolish slavery. 1 month later, the Naturalization Act of 1790 limits citizenships to white people. 1920, the 19th Amendment gives women the right to vote. Most African-American women, like African-American men, were prevented from voting in the southern states. 1923, this was a case in the Supreme Court, United States against Bhagat Singh Thind, and he decided that because he wanted to be classified as Caucasian because he was from the Caucasus Mountains. And the Supreme Court ruled that he was ineligible for naturalized citizenship in the United States because he was not Caucasian in the eyes of the court, which I thought was just really so rude. 1942, the Bracero program invited Mexican citizens to work temporarily in the US. That same year, President Roosevelt authorized mass internment of more than 120,000 Japanese American citizens and documented immigrants. And I don't know if you heard on the news, there was recently and I think it might have been even yesterday, a bus crash. It was a drunk driver in a truck hit a bus full of legal Mexican farm workers in Florida. 8 of them died, and there were 12 are in critical condition, and then others are less so, but it's still happening. 1954, Brown versus Board of Education. The Supreme Court unanimously ruled that segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. That same year, Immigration and Naturalization Service instituted Operation Wetback to deport undocumented Mexicans living in the United States. So it seems like every time we take a step forward, we take a step or two back. 1964. There we go. 1964, President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act and outlawing discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin. The same year, civil rights workers Michael Schwerner, James Chaney, and Andrew Goodman were murdered by the KKK in Mississippi. 2009, Sonia Sotomayor becomes the first Latina Supreme Court justice. At that same year, Harvard professor, renowned scholar, Henry Louis Gates Jr., who's Black, was arrested on suspicion of breaking and entering into his own home. And 2022, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson becomes the first Black woman confirmed in the Supreme Court. Also in 2022, there were 733 documented hate groups, 98 white nationalist groups, and 5,680 white supremacist flyering incidents. And a flyering incident is the posting of banners or flyers promoting hate, white supremacy, and other similar beliefs. The flyering would be where they put things underneath your windshield wipers on your cars or other sorts of things. So, continuum of race in the US versus reality. This is from the 2020 census. There's Black people, Indigenous, Asian, multiracial, and white. And they do not measure, this is the 2020 census does not measure Hispanics in this same continuum as they do race. And many people, you know, are Hispanic, and many people, some Black people, there's, I spoke recently to a Black woman who's from Panama, and she considers herself both Black and Hispanic. And there's a lot of people that fall into those, you know, multiple categories. Being Jewish is also not included in the US Census as a race, but some people describe it as a religion, whereas other people call it a race. It's sort of how you define your own Jewishness. But 92% of Jewish Americans identify as white. So this is the continuum of race in the US as measured by the Census Bureau. And this is race in reality. We're all people, we all we have the same blood, well, other than, you know, type A and B and whatnot, but you know what I mean. And this is what our session today is going to cover is race, race and ethnicity in the United States. So this is a guessing game. And those of you who have been here before, you'll know how this works. So guess, enter it into the chat box. What percentage of Gen Z are racial or ethnic minorities? Just put your guess in the chat box. $60, $48, $35. Anybody else? Guess 89. Ooh, big one. Well, here is the answer. It is 48. So about half of Gen Z are racial and ethnic minorities. And that's what's, you know, going on in our country. That is how much we are changing. Next one, people who identify as white, non-Hispanic in the US for the first time on record will fall below what percent of the country's population in 2020? So in 2020, at our last census, what percent were white, non-Hispanic? So put your guesses in, please. 46, 50, 50, 50, 50. And the answer is, boom, 58. 58%. So it's down from 63.7. It was 58% in the 2020 census. 2024, we are definitely in a different place. What is the year, number 3, what is the year that the US population will be majority non-white? Put your guesses in. 2045, 2030, 2065, 2032. And the answer is 2035, 2050. 2050. Let's see, I will be 98 years old. And it could happen. So number 4, what percentage of companies of the S&P 500 do not have at least one Black board member? Not one. Your guesses? 85, 35. Berlin, I like your name. 83, 90. And the answer is 29.6. And that was actually, that was lower than I thought it would be. And I can't recall what study it was, but I did see that in the diversity that is happening on boards, that women are the first group that have been added to a traditionally white male board. It's women, and then it's Black men is the next group. Black women are down the list. Number 5, and this goes to inclusion, without diverse leadership, what percentage of people of color, how less likely are they than straight white men to win endorsement for their ideas? What percentage? 90, 75, 83, 24. Ooh, 24. Who got 24? Somebody got 24. Yay, you got it right. Yeah, this is an ongoing problem, and we're gonna be talking about that. This is an activity, and I put in the chat box that you should have a piece of paper ready. And what you're going to do is you're gonna, on a blank piece of paper, and it needs to be big enough so that you can number 1 to 10 down the left-hand side. So get your piece of paper out, and then list 10 people that you trust, not including family. Actually, when I did it, I had 6 people that I trusted, which I don't know, maybe when you get older, you have a smaller group of people. I don't know about that. And then, so you've got the 10 people. And you don't have to have 10, but because like I said, I only had 6. And then across the top, write race and ethnicity, age, gender identity, sexual orientation, and ability. So your paper is going to look something like this. Now, for each of the people, give me a thumbs up or say yes if you're caught up with me here. Okay, I saw one thumb. Okay. So then what I want you to do is put an X next to each person under the column if they are different than you. So in my example, I've got my first 2 were women about the same age as me, both white, both straight, both without a disability. So I had no X's on my first 2 lines. On my 3rd line, I had 1 X because it was a man, so I got the gender. My next one, I have 2 X's because race and age are different. And on my last one, I have age, gender, and sexual orientation are all different. So has everybody got their little things done there? So now what I want you to do is put down how many X's you have on your piece of paper. How many check marks, how many X's? Because this is how diverse is your universe. So you grab your smartphone and you send your message. You send it to 22333, and in it you put Chris Jones 897, and then it'll say, I want to join, or I don't know what it says. It says something like that. Then put down how many X's you have. I want to just see in our universe of our webinar today, how many of you have a diverse universe? And I'm going to do it myself. Okay, is anybody trying to do it? Having an issue? So I am going to do it. 22333. Oops. 2233. 22333. And a 6 and a 10. A 2. An 18. Good for you. A 10, a 6, a 4. I don't know who put but people. I don't know what but people means. So potentially, if all of your people were different in some way, you would have at least 10. The point here is that, oh, somebody put 17. Okay. Only 16. Oh, I see what you did there, Valerie. Yeah. So the point is, and LaJuana and I have talked about this before, is that our universe, the universe that we live in, that we work in, the people that we trust, are largely people that are like ourselves. They're our in-group, they're people that we're comfortable with, that we've known for a while, that, it's a remarkably small group. And where that shows up, I mean, it shows up in our trust group, but it also shows up at work. in terms of who is in your, who you work with and how you get along with them. So what I want to share with you here, but obviously, people are not just one thing. I'm a baby boomer, I'm white, I'm a grandma, I'm an entrepreneur, and so what if this were a banquet and there were tables, grandparents, parents, white people, blah, blah, blah. What table would I sit at? I'm all of those things. We're all many things. And so a few years ago, I had our psychometrician do a study of intersectionality. And because there are so many different types of ways that people can be in terms of their demographics, I asked him to just focus on race/ethnicity, which is how Spectra measures it, and gender. And this is how the people since the beginning of our assessment started, so this goes back years, this is how they've registered management. So the white Caucasian males, and this is on a scale of 5 to 25 over all of our management questions. So the white Caucasian male is at the top. After that is the white females. After that, the Asian American females. After that, the Black men, then the multiracial women, and then the Black women, and then at the bottom, and you'll see this as a pattern, the white non-binary or third gender. So this is how, out of all of the assessments that we've done, this is how people rated management. So if management thinks they're doing a good job, overall, they're doing a good job, a better job in terms of what the white men think as compared to the white, non-binary, third gender, transgender people. This is the same thing on culture. So culture, going from 5 to 25, they're at 20.2 are the white men. They're really high in how they feel their culture. And down there at the bottom again is the white, non-binary, third gender. Once again, it's a constant story. And then this is the policies, practices, and procedures. And once again, well, this time the Asian men were at the top and the white men were right next to them. So, but once again, the white third gender, non-binary, transgender people are at the bottom. So if you want to learn more about the intersectionality, you can go to our website, and it was in our annual report. And this was in the annual report of 2022. 2023, we looked at different issues. So let's tackle a few myths. Here's one myth. Ivy League recruiting is the best. If you want to get good people in your company, you go to those people from, Harvard and Yale and other Ivy Leagues. So here, that green line are average universities, and then the top schools are over there on the right. But when you look at their performance, and this is their GPAs and whatnot, you can see that there's a whole bunch of people that, well, here, this shows it better. 5% of students from other schools, so 1 million people, outperformed the 300,000 students from the top 50 schools. So, and 6 million of the students from other schools were as talented as 95% of all of the top 50 students. So when you're looking at recruiting, if you were to look at recruiting from from an Ivy League school, for example, you've got a much smaller pool of people to pick from. So why would you limit yourself to those schools? Here's another myth. We don't want to lower the bar. Well, here's some data. Here's how many Ivy League students and their graduation rate. The HBCUs have 228,000, so more than the Ivy Leagues. The graduation rate is comparable. HBCUs make up 3% of the colleges and produce 20% of Black graduates. And among the doctoral candidates, 57% are white, 16% Hispanic, 11.5% are Asian, and 6% LGBT. And I'm not sure why Black students weren't in this study or in these numbers, because they should be. I apologize for that. Mythbuster, our hiring process is colorblind. And I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but ethnic names remain a problem. 2 decades ago, a Black woman named Kalisha White applied to be a team leader at Target, and she worried that her application had been ignored because of her race. She sent it back in with a different name and slightly fewer qualifications. That application with a whitish name and less experience got her an interview. So she filed a class action lawsuit and she won. A more recent, that was 20 years ago. A recent study by the University of California, Berkeley and the University of Chicago sent applications to 108 Fortune 500 employers. Half had white sounding names, the other half distinctly Black sounding names. Applicants with Black names were called back 10% fewer times across the board, despite having comparable applications. So, the hiring process is not, in fact, colorblind. This is another one that I get a lot of times, and this was from one of my change partners, and they had a largely white employee population, 93% white, and they said, well, that's because we're in Iowa. Well, I did their population, and this is, I can't say the metro area because that would give the client away, but this was a metro area compared to a metro area. And here you can say the metro area is still largely white, but it's 87% compared to 93. And their Black population was 4% compared to 1, so if, when you say we don't have enough BIPOC people in our community to hire from, I would guarantee that that is probably not the case. This was another one of my clients, DC metro area, and here they had, big white population, 68% Black, African American was 18. This is the reality. So they had 68% white people, and in their area, their geographic area, they had 37%. And look at the difference between the Black people. Excuse me, 18% versus 46%. Big difference. So our region doesn't have enough BIPOC people. That's a myth. Your region probably does have enough BIPOC people. This one I got from Paolo Guadiano from Alaria, and I will put Alaria's, they do a lot of different webinars, and they're always interesting. Excuse me. So this is what happened. This is a myth that quotas create fairness in hiring. Excuse me. So today, if this company has 1,000 employees and they want, and this is 20% white women, 5% women of color, 5% men of color. This is a hypothetical. 3 years, if they want to increase their women by 10%, their women of color by 3. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to mute myself and cough really loud for a second. Okay. 8%, and they think that in 3 years they will grow by 200 employees. Well, this is what happens. If you do that, you're actually, this is white discrimination, because there's the in order to get those increases, and if you're increasing by 200 employees, that means you've got to fire 52 white men. What company is going to want to do that? So setting quotas does not necessarily create fairness in hiring. It can be discriminatory. So when a white man says, well, we're being it's reverse discrimination, it can be, is the answer to that. So, and remember, diversity is a lagging and indirect indicator. Inclusion is what you do, then diversity is what you get. So the focus that Spectra has been taking lately is to focus on inclusion, and the diversity will follow, hopefully. Have your leaders said this? Yeah. And my favorite, I'm not racist, I'm from Canada. If you've heard your leaders say anything like this, then you have an issue, and issues can be dealt with in many different ways, and LaJuana is going to talk about that. So it is time for LaJuana. So basically, LaJuana and I have known each other for 7 or 8 years, and we met in person for the first time last year. We went to a conference, and it was so fun. I gave LaJuana a big hug. I said, hi, I'm so glad to see you. We had dinner and we went to sessions together, and it was really fun. So anyway, LaJuana, you are on board. Take it away. Oh, you're on mute, honey.
I thought I turned that off. Good afternoon. Yeah, it was so great to meet Chris. I consider her not only a vendor that my company, Tapestry, uses for the assessment, but also a friend. I started a little diversity book club. It was going to be one book, and it ended up being a 2-year-long book club, reading most of those books that Chris put together. I love her passion for this work. So Chris and I ran through a few questions, and we're going to kind of give some answers to these questions. What about quotas? How can affirmative action be promoted without hiring quotas? So I'm not going to speak about quotas. There was so much about affirmative action, was it a year ago, in the college atmosphere, but in the corporate atmosphere, first of all, quotas are just not even used. We talk more in terms of goals. Okay, and so every company that has at least 100 employees, or if you're a government contractor and you have 50 employees, you have to fill out an EEO-1 report. And that EEO-1 report looks at all the jobs, and every job is given a category, and we look at the demographics for those jobs. And when that information is sent in, and I think those reports, I think they're due like by December someday, December something. Anyway, you turn those in, and once you turn those reports in, you get something back, and it is your workforce utilization. So all that data Chris was sharing with you, that is the data that you get back from the organization. And I used to manage the affirmative action program for state of Indiana. Actually, the person who did it reported to me. So when you get the report back, it will actually look at what is the availability. So it'll say, oh, in job category 2, you might have 10 incumbents. Incumbents are how many you have in that job. But the census data shows that there are 20 available. So your goal is to put together action plans that help you get to that. And the action plan is not go hire 10 more. The goal is, what am I doing? So I love to use analogies, and I always use weight. So when you go to the doctor and you're supposed to weigh 120 and you weigh 130, a quota would be go lose those 20 pounds, right? But affirmative action plans would be eat less, exercise more, get your 10,000 steps in. What are those things you're doing to achieve that goal? So we talk about goals versus quotas. So that's my answer to that question. Okay. Do we need a diversity officer? Yay for diversity officers. I say that depends. It depends on a lot. It might depend on the size of your organization, but we see organizations that look for diversity officers or directors. You might be looking at your workforce. You might be looking at your EEO1 report or your workforce analysis that shows you have a lot of goals that you need to establish. You might be looking at your succession plan and you're seeing there are no people of color or women in your succession plan. You might be looking at discrimination suits. You might be looking at, have we made any big mistakes in the public? I know a few companies in Indianapolis made a few mistakes. They were in the paper, the way they posted for a job, and it just came out not the way they intended. So if you look at your workforce, discrimination, representation, all of those things, or who's going to buy my products? Who am I looking to buy my products? Am I missing a whole market here because I don't have diverse advertising? So those are some of the things that might determine whether or not you need a diversity officer. If not, if you don't have an officer, who in your organization is responsible for developing and implementing strategies? Who's calling the balls and strikes? Who's looking to say we missed it here? And if you're not in the role of DEI, you can't see the forest for the trees because you're too busy working on your own stuff. This is when we make diversity part of somebody's job. So I would say, yeah, I think you need somebody looking at DEI. If you're not going to hire an officer, you should have a consulting firm, someone coming in, looking at your policies, practices, and procedures, looking at your assessment results to see what actions can take place. So oh, go ahead, Chris. Were you gonna?
Well, I was gonna say that right after George Floyd was murdered, there was a number of people that were promoted to being a diversity officer because they happened to be a person of color. But
Right.
can you talk about, the
Yeah.
problems with that?
Problem. So a couple of things with problems with DEI, because we know it didn't all go down the way we hoped it would be. So one of the things, when you come in as a DEI officer or director, is there an agreed upon outcome between you and the CEO? And many times it's not. If anybody on this call is a diversity consultant or a diversity director, I bet when you ask your customers or your CEO, what are you trying to accomplish? I seldom get a really concrete answer. I think I got a concrete answer from one person. It's like, I want my workforce to represent the communities in which we serve. But most people kind of hem and haw of what they're actually looking for. There are 5 different reasons you might get in this DEI space. And sometimes things go not the right way when your goal and your leader's goal is not the same. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Benchmark tool. We use that a lot. They took that down this year. I'm really sad about it, but it's got 15 areas where DEI can be embedded. But in the beginning of that report, they look at there are 5 reasons you might be looking to be in DEI. It could be competence, it could be compliance, dignity, organizational development, and social justice. And is your reason for doing this the same as your leader's reason? And many times we poo-poo compliance. I don't poo-poo compliance. I just say make more things compliant. Managers do not, directors, CEOs, they don't want to get in trouble for not doing something. If you say, the law says we're supposed to do this, they go, oh, we need to get this done, right? And so compliance is okay. If that's the way you get your stuff done, that's the way I get some of my stuff done. Not only am I the owner of, I'll say those reasons again. Yes. So it's either competence, like, are you looking to increase the competence of individuals in your organization around DEI? Is it compliance? Is it adherence to legislation? Is it dignity? And some of these will overlap. Is it dignity? Are you focusing on secular or spiritual reasons for it? Is it organizational development that's focusing on improving the organization? And is it social justice, like fairness and equity to everyone? So where I am director of diversity, equity, and inclusion, we didn't have a lactation room. Like, we don't have a lactation, no, How come we don't have a lactation room? So I had to pull out, like, if we have over X number of employees, we're supposed to have a lactation room. When I presented that, guess what? We got a lactation room, but people weren't doing it because it was the nice thing to actually do. So you got to find out what's your reason for being in this and what is the company's reason. And many times when you're not in alignment, things just don't go the right way. Sometimes it's too much focus on people versus policies, practices, and procedures. So you're telling a group of people, you're wrong, that's a microaggression, and people get frustrated with that. So too much focus on that. And then the other reason, and Chris kind of said it, I see lack of authenticity. Many people got into DEI, and I call it the AGF after George Floyd. So they really weren't authentic about it. And they're like, hey, this is a way you can make some money. Let's jump on that bandwagon. So you can Google all the reasons DEI might have gone wrong. So how do we hold leadership accountable for DEI? Even if you go Google that, they give you the most nebulous answers, right? Because some companies are pulling away. There was just a big article about Starbucks, I want to say about a week ago. Starbucks used to hold their managers accountable for DEI as part of their performance bonus. And that they took that away. That was making people just go hire somebody, go hire a woman, hire somebody of color. And then we hear the term reverse discrimination. But I would go back to looking at other ways to hold managers accountable. One of the ways you can hold managers accountable is to see, are they acting as allies? Do they attend employee resource group meetings? If they are executives, are they stepping up to be executive sponsors of employee resource groups? Do they go to recruiting events, to HBCUs? Those are just some of the things. Who are they choosing to mentor? So those are some of the ways you can hold managers accountable that's not just based on who did you hire. When you are interviewing, are you making sure that you have a diverse slate of candidates? You'll hear like DSA, diverse slate adherence, or it's sometimes referred to as the Rooney Rule. Like, are you making sure we're not even going to start interviewing until there are at least 2 women in this interviewing pool? All right. So how can authentic leaders create psychologically safe space? That seems to be the new buzzword now, right? And you kind of know if your place does not have, if it's not psychologically safe, couple ways. One, if you're seeing a lot of turnover, if you're seeing people afraid to speak up at a meeting, if you see just people just not engaged, there might not be psychological safety. And a couple of ways you can have psychological safety. One way, have you ever been in a meeting and you say, and at the end, the speaker says, do you have any questions? And nobody has a question. You can get more questions by just saying something simple like, what questions do you have for me? Because now they're like, oh, I'm supposed to ask a question, right? Just saying it that way. What questions do you have for me? The other way you can do this is by telling someone in each meeting that they are playing the role of devil's advocate. Like if I say, Chris, I'm going to give you this presentation. I want you to pick the holes in it. I want you to tell me what we might be missing. What are we missing? And then Chris knows I'm supposed to do that. If I don't do that, I'm not doing my job. So those are 2 of the things. Also, a manager being engaged, having, put your phones away. Have your cameras turned on. One of the things my CEO does when I have a one-on-one with him, he doesn't sit behind his desk. We sit in his little sitting area. And I just feel like, and he puts his phone away. So I feel like he's really, really listening to what I have to say. All right, can anybody join a BIPOC ERG? Yes, so I worked for Xerox. We were the first company that had employee resource groups going back to the late 1960s. I wasn't working there then, but that's how long we had employee resource groups. And back then, the only people who were in the group were the people who were actually members of the group. But now they are open to everybody, to all of the allies. So at my organization, we just launched our 4 employee resource groups last year. And if you walk in a meeting, you might not know which employee resource group you're in. If you go to the women's group, it might be half men and half women in that group. But what we do at the end of the meeting, they're all on Zoom because my folks are in 17 different states. We ask allies to leave the call and then we turn the recording off because we record them for everybody to be able to see. But we turn the recording off and it's only members of that group to have that safe space. And I tell you, the conversations you hear afterwards, the learning that takes place, like, I didn't know that about that group. I really learned something in that meeting. So it's great to have anybody join any ERG. Do they need a budget? Yeah. You can't plan anything. If we say, let's have a birthday party, you got to have a budget. So I don't know how many of you remember the Arsenio Hall show. He used to do this little quote, things that make you go, Well, if somebody tells you you have an ERG, but you don't have a budget, you need to go, Right? You should have some type of budget. So organizational change is hard. Oh, hell yeah, it is. Where should DEI efforts begin? So, we always say start with an assessment. I would say even before the assessment, start with where are we trying to go? What is our vision? What are we trying to accomplish? Now we need to do some type of an assessment to figure out where we are. What's our starting point? And Chris didn't tell me to say this, but I'm just going to say it. We use the Spectra assessment because I love the way it breaks it down into looking at culture of an organization, looking at leaders, or looking at policies, practices, and procedures on the organization level. So when you look at that, you know what to start working on. We have 2 clients in the same city that are in kind of the same line of business with about the same number of people. And when they took that assessment, the area of opportunity for one organization was culture. The opportunity for the other organization was policies, practices, and procedures. And after they took that assessment, after we did some work, they went back and took the assessment again, and they were both able to move the needle. So the assessment really shows you some of the things you should be looking at. If you're, and if you, so that gives you stuff to look at versus just beating everybody up on microaggressions. So other things that you can look at to focus on systems and not individuals. The big thing, this is so easy, do a pay equity study. 75% of organizations do pay equity studies according to SHRM. Look at your diversity assessment or your engagement scores to see where there's areas for opportunity. Look at your exit interviews, do some stay interviews, look at turnover by demographics, so get data. The other things you can focus on that are so tiny and don't even cost a lot of money to focus on, look at your meetings. Like, let's look at our meetings. Are our meetings inclusive? Let's set some ground rules at meetings. Let's rotate roles so we're not always giving one person the order the lunch role, right? Or take notes role, which many times ends up on the females in the group. Make sure everybody's included. Here's an easy one. I have one person in my company that goes to everybody's ERG meeting. She has not missed one ERG meeting, and she's the co-chair for the African American meeting. I brought someone in to come do a problem-solving workshop, and I ordered lunch. I forgot to order her vegetarian meal. She's my most active person. So ask everybody, what do you eat? That's little. Look at how you source talent. When you're sourcing talent, take out all those extra things you need somebody to do, because when you have 20 requirements, if a woman doesn't meet, a woman or many times a minority, if we don't meet all 20, we're not even applying. Put little phrases in your job postings that say, even if you don't meet everything here, we encourage you to apply anyway. Take words out of your job postings, like looking for that ninja, IT, whatever, or that stealth person. That kind of shies women away. So look at the language in your sourcing. In your interviews, look at things like having a panel interview. And if I interview somebody and now I'm going to send them over to Chris, I should not tell Chris anything about what I thought about them. I'm just going to send them over, because if not, I've now just told Chris, I don't know, Tell me what you think, right? Have a rubric for what you're actually looking for. So you take out all those other things, and the words good fit should not even be included when you're evaluating candidates. So if you look at your sourcing, your interviews, your meetings, onboarding, performance reviews, promotion process, if you look at all of those things, do some research on what can we do in all of those areas in the hiring, in the life cycle of an employee to make them more inclusive. And this just is that tool that, Chris, we talked about it a little bit before, the AAPI tool, the affirmative action tool. What they do with that tool, they just look at all the categories, and it has the EEO1 category, and then you can put the next slide up, Chris. And if you are lacking, so for instance, let's look at job number 1. It's female incumbency for this particular job is 0. The availability according to the census data is 47%. Do we establish a goal? Yes, not a quota, a goal. And then the next report will kind of show you what that goal is, and it's the actions that you do to address that. Like for instance, if we just look at the last one, because that's short, we had a high termination rate for females in job group 8. What's the corrective action? Immediately review exit interview survey of terminated females to confirm voluntary reason for leaving. So when you have that data, whether it be from the Spectra assessment tool, whether it be from your exit interviews, your roundtables, your focus groups, take that and actually look at what are the actions. It's not just putting out a quota that you'll get sued for.
Thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
To conclude, these are 7 commitments that companies can make to advance racial justice. 1, commit to anti-racism personnel policies and racial equity training. And this gets to what LaJuana was talking about, tackling make the rules, make the policies, make it part of your company, and then make it an expectation that your leaders are following through with that. Commit to pay equity. There's no longer any excuse for disparities in wages for people of color or women. Conduct a wage equity audit and make the adjustments needed to achieve fair and equitable pay. Commit to giving employees a voice. And this is, like LaJuana said, this is in the ERGs, but it's also what questions do you have rather than do you have any questions? Sometimes it's just simple, simple changes. Commit to supporting full participation in democracy. And this would be making election day a paid holiday. Give them the day off. This should be part of how we work. Commit to lobbying for good. And this is, this goes to Congress. And as we know that there are lobbyists lobbying for every single issue, but let's commit to lobbying for good. So let's not lobby to have dirty air and dirty water. Let's commit to lobbying for clean air and clean water. So lobby for good. If your business, here's a little note, if your business model relies on immigrants who live, work, and pay taxes in the United States, you owe them to stand up for their rights and a path to citizenship. Commit to paying a living wage. This goes to the minimum wage. One of my, I have a number of boycotts, companies that I won't buy from. And one of them is Walmart because I won't go there. I know they have good deals, but they just don't pay their people well, and a lot of their employees are on welfare. And commit to paid parental and sick leave would be good. So I love this. Those of you that are DEI practitioners, Arthur Chan, this is a great quote. Please don't let people gaslight you into believing that you're incompetent when a DEI initiative fails. After all, you're trying to change systems and culture. And it requires, it's a good one. Give yourself grace and compassion. Give yourself a hug. Any questions? If you do have them, put them in the chat. I see people are leaving, and it's time for me to give away a book. I give
Chris,
away
real quick, somebody did ask, should we share the results with executives and leaders? Yes,
Yeah,
because
that I said
for
yes
sure,
to.
yes.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. A free book, Megan Callahan Pelko, are you here? If you are, say yes in the chat. And I had 90 people sign up, so. Donna Birge, B-I-R-G-E, Birge. Jessica Clowney. H.J. Kim. What I did is I figured out how to make a, okay, let's see. Eva Revere. Eva. Joey Miranda, are you here? Oh, let's see. Bertie Johnson. Alvin Hill. Keely Myers. Oh, Berlin. Berlin is here, and I love your name. So Berlin is here, and Keely is here. Okay. Keely Myers. Yay, okay. I will send you each a book. We give 2 books away each time. So, and if when you get your book, oh, no one called Berlin. I was just kidding. I did call Berlin. Didn't I call Berlin? Well, Berlin, you won. I'm just going to say that you won because there you are. Anyway, I would appreciate if you would write a review on Amazon because it helps things move along. Thank you, LaJuana, my friend that I have seen once in person. And thank you all for coming. Our next meeting is going to be on the topic of sexual orientation. That'll be a big one. They're all big ones. What am I saying? Okay, thank you all. And I will see you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.